It started with the biggest pipe bomb the FBI had ever seen.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
It ended in a dumpster after the largest manhunt in American history.
My knees knocked so hard that I was about to answer them. That's how nervous I was.
Eric Rudolph and the rise of anger.
Domestic terrorism has been metastasizing across the country for a long time now.
True story, true crime, true consequences for us all.
American Shrapnel, from award-winning journalists Becca Andrews and John Archibald, two-time winner of the Pulitzer Prize. Now available wherever you get your podcasts.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at usaa.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means. That's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis. And we've made it to the end of the line. Full market down Monday for the 2025 season, and it's the big one. It's where we predict records. It's where we predict the Big Ten champion. It's where we predict the college football playoff, who's going to make it to the Final Four, who's going to win a national championship. And we're also going to have a Michigan conversation because that's what you have to have when the team you cover has lost 4 straight in that rivalry and yet still managed to win a national championship in 2024. We're going to get straight into it. I also sent this survey to our texter, 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that if you want to vote and stuff like this. I think I'm going to do a rant pod heading into the Texas game next week. That should be fun. It's recruiting things happening that we're going to deep dive into after the Texas game. It's just the Texas game is too important to be focusing on a signing day when it's 4 months from now. And so we'll get into some of the stuff that's been happening on the recruiting trail on a later day. But I am at least having a conversation with people in our text, 614-350-3315, about what is going on and trying to provide as much context as I can about why it's happening and how maybe you should or shouldn't feel about certain things. But let's get into it. Stefan, you first. During the regular season, Ohio State will go, and here are the options I gave our texters: 12-0, 11-1, 10-2, or 9-3 or worse. What's your record for Ohio State during the regular season, and why?
I've gone back and forth a lot this offseason on Ohio State's record because I've gone back and forth a lot on Ohio State's first game of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I have settled on 11-1, which if you listen to our Big Ten preseason poll pod, I think I might have said 10-2. I've gone to 11-1 because I think Ohio State will beat Texas in the season opener. We'll do more predictions on that game in the future, but 11-1 is what I have Ohio State going.
What I love about this is I've also gone back and forth about that first game, and I'm going to give a market down right here, but we're also going to predict the game in 4 days, and I am not completely sure. I might not flip-flop again, depending on how the week goes. So it's this is what happens when you play the number one team in the country in week 1. But both teams have so much new is you don't know which way to lean. But today, as of Monday, as people are listening to this, Stefan is saying 11-1 for Ohio State, which means you're saying 8-1 in the Big Ten. And we'll get into those 9 games later on in this podcast because I think I know what that one is. I think I know what the one is. And we'll have a bigger conversation about that later. Andrew, what's your record for Ohio State regular season?
11-1.
Okay. All right. This is going to be fun. Okay. Do you both have Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game?
Yes.
Okay. So question number 2. Our texters, by the way, 11-1, 60% said 11-1. And 26% said 10-2, 13% said 12-0, 2% said 9-3 or worse, which I think it's crazy. Yeah, that's the crazy thing. But then you look at their schedules, it's like, okay, enough things go haywire in the right situations. You can map out how the 3 losses happen, even if you would be shocked to see that be the outcome of this season, right? You got a season opener against the number 1 team in the country. Washington on the road might get a little tricky, especially since they're coming off of a bye week. They might be a little rusty. Illinois, if they're sneaky good, that's a road game. Penn State's on the schedule. You've got your rivalry at the end of the season. You can map it out, even if it's a long shot to happen. Question number 2, Ohio State will win the Big Ten championship game, make the Big Ten championship game, but lose and miss the Big Ten championship game. Andrew, what is yours? And it's obviously it's not miss because you just said they would make it. So between the two, win it and lose it, which one are you?
They're going to win the Big Ten. I do think
Stefan,
they're going to win the Big Ten. Third year in a row.
Yep, I have Ohio State win the Big Ten this year.
Okay, so
this is the third year in a row I predicted them to win the Big Ten. So we'll see.
So you guys haven't been to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game yet. That's insane.
I only know Indianapolis is the NFL Combine place.
That's not true.
I don't know it as anything. I don't know it as anything else.
That's not true. Media Days used to be there. So you've been there.
No, that's
for a college.
Vegas.
Huh?
That's Las Vegas.
Yeah, but there was in Indianapolis 2 years prior. I haven't. The last time I was at the Big Ten championship game was 2020, and that was the year they played it at noon because, COVID stuff, and Trey Sermon ran all over the place. I also went in 19 and 18 when Dwayne Haskins was there in 18 and Justin Fields won it in 2019. I haven't been back since. I don't know what Indianapolis is like in December. Maybe we'll figure that out over the next couple years here.
I would love if the Big Ten title game was at noon. Like, that is a game that I think everyone would be fine having it at noon, but here we are.
I think it's ironic that I think it was on CBS last year. It's on Fox this year. I think they're just alternating it. And I think it's hilarious that it's on the Big Ten championship game is on Fox this year because it's at night. It's like the one time a year.
Right.
Who you
and
have
like,
been playing
and like not only is it at night, but it's like, it doesn't start at like 8 p.m.
It starts at like 8 p.m. It's literally the last game that night.
It's like we can't do like a night game like a little bit earlier than that, though. Like literally as late as possible on the East Coast.
You've been programmed to cover Ohio State at noon, and then all of a sudden the playoff hit, and you're like, man, these night games, man, they're starting to wear on me.
I wasn't built for it.
Who do you guys have them playing? Big Ten championship game.
Penn State Nittany Lions.
The Michigan Wolverines.
Oh Lord. Okay.
I have 2 weeks of Ohio State, Michigan.
Does cleveland.com offer mental health services for us? Because we're going to need it.
Okay, so let's get into it because I thought about the route that Stefan has taken here. I asked our texters, it's literally the last question here, so we'll get back to some of the playoff stuff in a minute here. What's your confidence in Ohio State's ability to beat Michigan on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest level of confidence you can have, 10 being the highest level of confidence that you can have? The average was 6.83, and they're literally every single digit but number 2 got at least 1 vote. You have them losing the first game to Michigan, Stefan.
Correct, yeah.
Andrew, is your loss Michigan?
No.
Who's your loss?
Texas.
Oh, so you have them going 9-0 in conference play.
I have them losing to Texas, and then beating everybody else on Michigan.
Why losing to Texas? By the way, if Andrew ends up being right, this will be the first time that Ohio State has lost a season opener since 1999 when they lost to Miami. Why Texas?
I don't know. I'm a believer in Arch. I know that draws eye rolls around here, but I do think Arch is going to be really, really good. I do think the hype is legit. I think for as much as Texas does need to figure out, I am curious how that plays out in the press box for Ohio State. Because you got 2 new coordinators. I understand Hartline's been around a while, but you have a guy who's calling plays for the first time at the college level, and here it goes. And then you've got a guy who's calling plays for the first time at the college level on defense in like 2 decades. And he's been out of football for a year. And those things I have questions about, but I think Ohio State is going to be able to identify what it is and what it needs to be through the course of the year. And I think it's going to get better as it goes. I mean, somebody pointed this out after Julian Sand got named the starting quarterback. Ohio State could have its number 1 receiver, number 1 running back, and number 1 quarterback back for 2 straight years. And you're dealing with a lot of new on both rosters, specifically like Ohio State at the key positions, but the coordinator battle is something that I have really kind of been locked into. That's why I think they're going to lose to Texas.
Why is your loss in Michigan, Steph?
Same reason I have Ohio State beating Penn State. Prove me wrong. Show me otherwise. I mean, on top of which, it's a tough road environment. I think Michigan's going to be a decent team this year, pretty good team this year, and I think Bryce Underwood is going to be better by his 12th game than his first game. So, in terms of football, I do think Michigan will be a better team than they were last year and have significantly better quarterback play. So, on the field, I think it's going to be a better product for Michigan. And then there's the intangibles of I like the idea of maybe the way last season ended, flips a switch for Ryan Day and he can get over the mental hurdle of the Michigan rivalry and maybe winning the national title turns him loose, and there's not all this pressure, at least him personally, on how you call plays and how you approach the Michigan game. Like, maybe this does flip a switch for him. I'm very open to the idea of that. I'll be open to the idea of that when it's proven to me. Right now, I'm just going to have my hesitations. Like, we talked about this when the game finished last year, just like, until Ryan Day does it, until Ohio State does it under Ryan Day, like, I'm going to have my hesitations, and that's just where I stand on the rivalry right now.
I thought about putting Illinois in the Big Ten championship game. Ohio State's the toughest team on their schedule. That's it, though, right? They got Washington. Now, the Washington game could get tricky because it is at Washington. I don't believe in Lincoln Riley as far as I can throw him. I think Indiana might take a little bit of a step back this year. They don't have a marquee non-conference game. Well, they do. They play Duke. But I think I am not going to be shocked if Illinois gets through the Big Ten schedule and they only have one loss, and then the tiebreakers come into play, and maybe they beat out Penn State because of tiebreakers. But the same thing can happen for Penn State, where their only loss is to Ohio State, and then maybe the Oregon loss, depending on their schedule, might give them the tiebreaker. But I guess we'll have to see what the tiebreakers are when they come out with those. I don't think Michigan's good enough to beat Ohio State this year yet. If we're just talking strictly football, right? If you're not bringing in the extra things that go into college football, but also this rivalry has reached a point where until you show me you can do it again, I have no faith that you can do it again. So it can be that it doesn't have to, I don't think there has to be some super analysis when you just watched a team who for 4 games after that showed us exactly who they are and how they just wasted college football. For whatever reason, that last week of November, it just doesn't translate. And the reason why it doesn't translate is all it takes is for one thing to go wrong, and then it starts creeping into the back of your head again. Now, I do think it helps that you've heard a lot of the players and Ryan, they talk about how they wanted to take stuff down, a lot of the banners and stuff down, a lot of the memorabilia and stuff down, because this is not, we didn't win that national championship of those guys who are no longer here, won the national championship, which is a fine thing to do. But I think you can also look at it from the perspective of these guys, if you want to say they were guys on the roster of a team who won a national championship, but not necessarily the guys driving the car, I think you can also say that these guys, while they haven't beaten Michigan, they also weren't the guys who were losing to Michigan, if that makes sense. They weren't the guys out there playing outside of JJ, who just got here last year, Caleb, who just got here last year, Carnell, who was a first-year starter last year. And like, that's kind of it, right? If you talk about people who have multiple losses in the game, it's in terms of they were playing meaningful roles. It's Carson Hinsman, Sonny Styles, Davis Igbinosun. And then Caleb has 2 losses to Michigan because he played them in the playoff while he was still at Alabama. So there is a reset in terms of the rivalry as well. But I just, 4 years in, man, you just, until you see it, you can't really put a lot of faith in it. So I have them going 8-1. Because I don't think Michigan is quite there yet with a first-year starting quarterback, I think they might take a couple other stumbles during the Big Ten schedule that keeps us out of the world of 14 days of Ohio State-Michigan talk. So in 2026, though, I think we're going to have 14 straight days of Ohio State-Michigan talk. And then they might also play each other in the college football playoff at that point. But I'm just not there yet with Michigan. Even if their schedule lends itself to it, you're still playing a young quarterback. And this defense is not as good as it was last year.
Well, I think that's interesting with Michigan from at least my perspective on it is I think there will be their stumbles, but if they stumble at Oklahoma, that doesn't affect their spot in the Big Ten standings. And if I have them beating Ohio State, the only other real Big Ten game on the schedule that I think they might lose is at Nebraska. So, they could start off, like I've said, I think I said on this pod before, they could start off 2-2. And if they beat Ohio State, they're in a Big Ten title game. And I think that's kind of the direction I'm headed.
I don't think that's a wrong, but what if they drop a Nebraska game? What if Washington makes some magic happen? I don't want to put too much faith in Lincoln Riley, but who knows? They're a freshman quarterback mistake away from losing some games where on paper they probably shouldn't lose those games. Andrew, why the faith in Ohio State? Why do you believe that this rivalry is going to at least start flipping back in Ohio State's direction in terms of this losing streak is going to end in 2025?
I think there is a little something to be said for the changing of the guard. And I think there is something to be said for last season's run. Allow me to take last season's run first, because that's the easiest answer. You just won the national championship, man. Have some dang confidence, right? Like you beat Oregon, you beat Tennessee, you beat Texas, you beat Notre Dame. Puff your chest out, man. It's okay to think that you are good. It's okay to walk into a situation and have that kind of confidence. That's it. I think, there is this element of we figured out what we needed to do. I think that, that famous now team meeting where basically they got in front of everybody and were like, what were we doing against Michigan? That was insane. And, Ryan Day kind of owned a lot of stuff and players owned a lot of stuff. And I think that mentality definitely made an impact. And I think they probably came out of that meeting thinking, we cannot do this again. And I think that's probably going to come up again when they play Michigan. But the changing of the guard thing that I just keep coming back to is like, go look at a team that wins a championship in another sport that's young, that like maybe they're not even supposed to be there yet. Or maybe they're replacing guys who hadn't been there, who hadn't been part of the failure. Like for those who like listen or like know, like I'm from the DC area. I grew up a Washington Capitals fan. They had great seasons and they always lost to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Pretty much every year it felt like they were losing to the Penguins in the playoffs. And then guess what? The salary cap hit. They couldn't pay a bunch of dudes. They had to replace a bunch of dudes who like weren't in the NHL. They were young. They weren't on the team. When they got asked about, oh, how are you going to beat the Penguins this year? They're like, I don't know, man. I wasn't here. Why do I care that this organization hasn't won a championship in forever long? When the Houston Astros won their first World Series, and I know there might have been some shenanigans going on there, they were all like 21, 22, 23 years old. They're not thinking, oh my God, it's the World Series. This is the biggest moment of my life. You know what they're thinking? Let's go play baseball. They're kind of too young to know what they don't know. And it's like, why is it fair for Julian Sayin to wear the weight of history going into that Michigan game? I don't think he has to. And I don't think he will. Why is Bo Atkinson going to show up to that Michigan game? Or why should Bo Atkinson show up to that Michigan game and be afraid of the Wolverines? Man, they've beaten us 4 times in a row. God, I can't believe. Bo Atkinson was at North Carolina last year, man. Why does he care? Jermaine Matthews didn't start. Like, Arvell Reese wasn't on the field a lot. Some of these guys are just not impacted by it. And I really think there's going to be a mentality shift when it comes to the Michigan game because you won and because the guys who are going to be playing this year, pretty much all of them didn't lose to Michigan before. So I think there's going to be a difference in the way that they approach it. And I think it's going to work.
I don't think it's off base, man. I don't think it's thinking that a lot of the guys who had struggled with Michigan being gone, maybe it changes the way they view that game. Isn't a wrong approach to it. I also don't think it's a wrong approach to just be like, you've lost 4 in a row, man. You got to show me you can do this again before I believe you can do it. I think both of those are fine. Those are our records, though. We all have them going 11-1. Andrew has them undefeated in Big Ten play. Stefan and I have them both losing to Michigan, but we do have both. We all 3 have them winning the Big Ten. For Stefan, it's avenging a loss to Michigan 7 days later. For me, it's beating Penn State. And for Andrew, it's beating Penn State. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to take a look at the college football playoff where it's 12 teams. So we're going to try to go through this quickly. We don't want to make this mundane, but we want to have a conversation about what we think the playoff field might look like and the road to the national championship here on Buckeye Talk.
Brooks Running reminds us that we're all powered by something. Whether it's the me-time energy of a run after a day at the office, the electrifying energy of your first marathon, or the infectious energy of a group run with your friends. No matter what energy powers you, Brooks has gear specifically designed to unleash it. So lace up and let it out. Let's run there. Visit brooksrunning.com today to learn more.
Race the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
We're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Stefan Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis. We're breaking down the college football playoff and where we think Ohio State fits into it. Get the text 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. And you can answer questions like this. Ohio State football's college football playoff seed will be, and the options are a top 4 seed, which means you get a first-round bye, which means you don't have to win the Big Ten to get the first-round bye anymore. You just have to be one of the 4 best teams in the country. Seeds 5 through 8, which means you get a first-round home game. seeds 9 through 12, which means you got a first round road game. Ohio State did have a home game last year. They were in the 8th seed. And the final option is won't make the college football playoff. Andrew, I'm going to let you go first here. What is Ohio State's seed in the 2025 college football playoff?
I have them as the 3 seed.
Okay.
Big Ten champ as the 3 seed, which
Okay.
I think gives a hint as to what I might have coming down the line.
Well, I don't know. Stefan, what's Ohio State's seed in the 2025 college football playoff?
I have Ohio State as the Big Ten champ, being the 2 seed in college football playoff.
I also have them as the Big Ten champ and the 2 seed in the college football playoff. Okay, so our Texers, 74% said top 4 seed, 21% said 5 through 8 seed, 5% said 9 through 12 seed, and 1% said won't make the college football playoff. There's always some pessimists out there. There's got to be some pessimists. Okay, so here's what we'll do. I'm assuming both of you did a full 12 because it just makes, from the sake of sanity, makes life easier for everybody in terms of how you want to map it.
Okay. Yeah, we're ready to roll.
Okay, cool. I don't know everybody's thought. Everybody does a different thinking process. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to give our top 4 seeds first and say who won conference championships and who didn't when you give your top 4 seeds, unless you only have conference champs as your top 4 seeds. My top 4 seeds are Clemson at number 1, Ohio State at number 2, Texas at number 3, Bama at number 4. And Clemson, Ohio State, and Texas all won their conference. And the reason Ohio State is above Texas is because they have the head-to-head matchup. That is mine. Stefan, you first. What is your 1 through 4?
Yeah, man, I'm in a very similar spot as you, actually. I got Clemson number 1 as the ACC champ. Ohio State number 2 is the Big Ten champ. Texas number 3 is the SEC champ with a loss against Ohio State, which is why I have them at 3. And then the only place I differed is number 4, I have Georgia.
Okay. Andrew, your turn. Just give me your top 4.
I also have the Clemson Tigers as the number 1 seed, the ACC champ. I have Alabama as the number 2 seed at 12-1 as the SEC champ. I have Ohio State as the Big Ten champ at number 3, and I have Texas as the number 4 seed as the SEC.
Okay, so we all have Alabama and Texas playing each other in the SEC championship game. Wait, no.
Yes.
You have Georgia, Stefan.
Oh, yeah.
We all have Texas winning the SEC. Why do we all have Texas?
I have
No, you have Bama. Sorry, we all have Texas getting to the SEC championship game. Why do we all have Texas getting to the SEC championship game?
I think they're really good.
Right, but like you look at their schedule, they've got Georgia. They're at Georgia on their schedule, at Florida. They got Oklahoma, obviously, and they got Texas A&M. It's not like their schedule is cakewalks together. We all have Clemson number 1 because they're a very good football team in a conference where they somehow avoided a lot of the pitfalls that you could have, and they might be undefeated. And if they're undefeated, they're going to be the number 1 seed. Why do we have Texas? Why do we have, I guess we'll start like Stefan, why do you have Texas versus Georgia as your SEC champion?
Yeah, I think Texas's only loss in SEC play is going to be that game at Georgia.
Okay.
And I like I'm not huge on Georgia, and I'm not really sure what the Gunnar Stockton experience is going to be. But if you remember last year, Kirby complaining about a lot of their games being on the road, or a lot of their bigger games being on the road, it's the inverse this year. Ole Miss is at home, Alabama's at home, Texas is at home. The Florida game, that I believe they're still playing that game in Jacksonville. Yeah, they are. So that's a neutral site. So as much as I'm iffy on the Georgia roster and specifically the quarterback competition, I think their schedule lends itself to winning some games at home. So if Texas loses an SEC game, I think the only loss would be at Georgia. So that's why I have those two teams making it again for a rematch in the title game, and I have Texas winning the title game.
Which is essentially what happened last year, except Texas lost both of those games. So you just have last year happening again, except Texas gets the final win this time around. Andrew, why do you have Bama versus Texas?
Yeah, I think people have kind of gotten a little bit over their skis with Bama. Like, Bama still has a ton of talent on that team, and I think it's all Saban's gone. It's not what it was, and I get it. And they still are really, really talented at running back. I know they just had an injury there. They've got Ryan Williams, who is a very, very good receiver. Ty Simpson's their quarterback, and he's a 5-star too. Like, he was the number 3 quarterback in the 2022 recruiting class. He's the number
no different than Arch Manning in terms of 5-star who had to wait his turn.
Yeah, so it's like everybody's kind of talking about this or Alabama quarterback situation as if it's like some kind of mess, and like Ty Simpson might just be good. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be like Cade Klubnik, who I predicted to win the Heisman, or I'm not saying he's going to be, first overall pick, but Ty Simpson being good is not a crazy concept. And if that's true, I think Alabama was struggling last year in part because their passing attack was not what you would want it to be with Jalen Milroe. And like if that flips a little bit, the defense, I mean, the talent's still there. So I think Alabama's really good. And I think Texas is kind of the same thing. Sometimes I think maybe the easiest practice is when you look at some of these matchups. I know it's a little bit different in college, maybe compared to like the NFL, but sometimes I just look at these matchups and I go, man, right now the look ahead line is Georgia -2 versus Texas at home. I think Texas has the better quarterback in that game. And sometimes that's the tiebreaker for me. Oh man, that's going to be a massive game. I just come down to who has the better quarterback. And it's like if quarterbacks are going to matter in that game like that, I think Arch is going to matter. So I think Texas is going to beat Ohio State. And then that Florida game doesn't really scare me because I don't know about Florida. Red River's obviously always kind of a mess. But them, even if they lose to Georgia, they beat A&M at home. They have one SEC loss. Georgia picks up 2 SEC losses because of their quarterback situation. Like, they got to go on the road to Tennessee. They got to play Alabama. They play Ole Miss. Like, that to me was not insane. So that's why I went out.
I think part of the reason why there's reservation about Ty Simpson is if it feels like he's not going to be the starter by the end of the year. Because maybe you see a situation where Keelan Russell, the 5-star, right? And if you think that's the case, it doesn't knock them out of the playoff conversation, but it might drastically change what you think the ceiling is if you think the guy who's starting week 1 isn't the guy who's going to be starting week 12. I don't know which side of that fence I lean on because I don't cover Alabama, so I don't know the inner details of that. Okay, that's our top 4. Stefan, I'm going to let you go first this time. Who are the 4 teams getting home games?
All right. I have the 5 seed as Penn State. I do think I have Penn State not making it to the Big Ten title game, but I still think that they're 11-1 on the season. Okay. So I think going into the Big Ten title game, they will already be the 5 seed, and they're just going to stay put there. 6 seed, I have Alabama. I'm also pretty high on Bama. The only reason I didn't pick Bama to be in the SEC title game is because I think they're going to lose at Georgia. So that's why I have Georgia there and not Bama. 7 seed, I have Notre Dame. I think you can make a case for Notre Dame going undefeated this year and being one of those top 4 seeds. That said, same thing. It feels like we talk about this with all the top teams. Young quarterback. There's some tricky games on the schedule. I wouldn't be surprised if Notre Dame dropped a game somewhere, and that's why they fell out of that top 4 conversation. Also, like we've seen Marcus Freeman, like Miami and Texas A&M are not the teams I'm terrified of. Like he's shown that there's gonna be a game randomly on the schedule that he loses. So that gives me some hesitation about putting Notre Dame as an undefeated team. So I have them as a 7 seed. Getting a home game. And the last home game I have 8 seed. That's where I have Michigan at 10-2, being an 8 seed.
So far you have 3 Big Ten teams. You have 3 SEC teams, and then Clemson and Notre Dame. Andrew, who are getting your home games?
First 2 are pretty similar. I have Penn State as the 5 seed. I think they're going to lose twice to Ohio State. I think they're going to lose twice to Ohio State. I think they're going to lose in the regular season, and then I think they're going to get to Indianapolis, and I think they're going to lose. I do buy Penn State just in general, but like Penn State might be better than 98% of college football teams. Ohio State just might be in that 2% of college football teams. So I have them going 11-2, and I think I had Texas as the 4-1 because I think they're going to lose in the SEC championship game, but also I think them beating Ohio State gives them that bump up over Penn State. So Penn State 5, Georgia 6, Miami 7.
Miami boy.
And they're laughing when Stefan didn't do it. And then I have Oregon as the 8 seed. And those are the home games. So Penn State, Georgia, Miami, and
this is the most Andrew bracket I've ever seen.
Oh, it's going to get worse.
Got Miami and Georgia.
It's going to get worse.
You think the ACC is getting 2 teams again this year?
Yes, I do. And we're going to explain why in about 5 minutes.
Okay. Here are mine. My home games are Penn State 5 seed. And I do want to talk about that in a second. I have LSU as my 6 seed. I've got Kansas State as my 7 seed, getting a home game. I've got Georgia as my 8th seed, sneaking in with a home game. You're right, Stefan. A lot of these games are at home for Georgia. I just don't believe in Gunnar Stockton. And if they drop 2 games because of it, I think if they lose, I think they're going to lose to Alabama and Texas and be 10-2. And that they're not playing in the SEC championship because of that, but they're also, they can't get any worse. If they're 10-2, I think they're making the college football playoff. I think Kansas State, the Big 12 is always a crapshoot. But Avery Johnson, I think, might take a step. this year in a necessary step where November can get tricky for all of the Big 12, but maybe Kansas State comes out of that and then they end up winning the conference. And so they end up getting a home game because of that. The Big 12 champion did not, I don't believe they got a home game last year. I think they'll get one this year. And LSU's schedule is not nearly as difficult as I think it looks like it is on paper. And I think that's the reason why I have them as a 6th seed is because they have an Indiana level schedule from last year where they lose to Clemson. They lose one of their conference games during the year, but they're 10-2, and it's the most, this is a fake good team I've ever seen, but because they've got a quality schedule, they end up making the college football playoff with a pretty high seed in a home game. They've got Clemson, Florida, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Bama, and Oklahoma. And I think them getting into the college football playoff might come down to that Oklahoma game on November 29th. I think they lose at Bama. I think they beat Texas A&M because it's at home. And I think they beat Ole Miss on the road because I just do not believe in Lane Kiffin in that program at all. And in South Carolina, I'm just not ready to believe in them totality. I think they lost a lot of talent to where I think they're getting a little too much hype going into this year because Lenora Sellers is good, but you can only ask him to be Superman so many weeks in a row. So 10-2 LSU gets into the college football playoff with a 6th seed. And then I mentioned Georgia, Kansas State. Kansas State's schedule, by the way, and take with this what you want to take with it, because again, the Big 12 is a crapshoot. They got Iowa State at home. They don't have a tough non-conference opponent. They got North Dakota and Army.
They don't have Iowa State. Iowa State's, that game's done as we're recording.
You're right.
That game's done as you're listening.
Oh yeah, you're right. It is done.
It's not. If I'm not mistaken, it's not a conference game, so it wouldn't affect Kansas State's spot in the conference.
Correct. It's not a conference.
So if Kansas State is 0-1 right now, Stephen could still be okay.
I can still be okay. Okay, fine. Yeah, we're recording this on Friday afternoon, so I am predicting that they're going to beat Iowa State in Dublin tomorrow. And as of you're hearing this Monday, they will be 1-0 going into week 1 of the regular season. Texas Tech could be an interesting game. But it's TCU, because again, the Kansas might be interesting. The Big 12, it's a crapshoot. So who knows what's going to come out of that. But I just think Kansas State comes out of that with a Big 12 championship. Stefan, actually, all three of us, I want to ask this question. Because the reason why we don't have the top 4 seeds all being from the from the Big 10 and the SEC is because we think the ACC champion is going to be undefeated. Is that the right way to view this?
Yeah. I think a 1-loss Clemson winning the ACC could maybe still be a 4 seed.
Sure.
So I'm not totally opposed to it, but yeah, I think the reason we have Clemson, or the reason we have an ACC champ here, is because we think this ACC champ might actually just be really good.
And if they're undefeated, then that's how you're right. If they're 1 loss, and their 1 loss is like LSU, especially in my case, who LSU's in the playoff, then maybe you get into that world. Maybe this is a question more for you, Stefan, than Andrew, because he has multiple teams from a conference that's not the Big 10 or the SEC in his bracket already. How much did the college football playoff and the release they put out last week of how they're maybe changing a little bit of how they evaluate things impact who you thought would make the college football playoff and how you seeded it?
Everything that's happened this offseason makes me think, and we've talked about this before, Stephen, the Big 12 and the ACC should jump on an opportunity to have 2 automatic bids in an expanded playoff, because the way we talked about strength of record and strength of schedule, and now the SEC is going to be going to 9 games next season, and everything that's and the way we change seeding, and everything is lending itself to the SEC and the Big 12 or Big 10 are the alphas. We want to set this up so we have the best teams from the SEC and the Big 10 in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that lends itself to the ACC and Big 12 struggling to get multiple teams in again.
Yeah, because I'm not going to be shocked if Georgia goes 9-3 and makes the college football playoff. And
Correct.
2 months ago, I would have said Georgia being 9-3 is not making the college football playoff. I'm never going to be in a world where I feel like if you can't win 10 games, you shouldn't make the playoff. If I was the king of college football and made all the rules, 10 wins, or you can't play in the college football playoff unless you somehow magically made it to your conference championship game because things were so colluded that it's 2 8-win teams playing in your conference championship game, okay, fine, then the conference champion gets in. But if you are a non-conference champion, 9-3 or worse team, you do not belong in the playoff. That's if Stephen Means was king of college football. Stephen Means is not the king of college football. So that might not happen. There's going to be a 9-3 team that makes a playoff. And I think with what you're saying, Stefan, the combination of how often Greg Sankey seems to find himself in front of a microphone over the last couple of months here, mixed with What the SEC did with the scheduling, that's a future conversation, which is why we're not having it right now. But some of the things that the college football playoff put into place, which I felt like were a direct shot at here, stop complaining SEC, but also Indiana getting into the playoff last year without ever having to prove they were a playoff team. But that's the resume. I mean, they played their schedule, right? It's not their fault that the two teams who played in the national championship game the year before that fell off a cliff. That they had Washington and Michigan on their schedule. So it's not their fault. But because of what happened on their schedule, they never had to prove they were a playoff team. And then they got in the playoff, and Jeremiah Love ran 97 yards down the field, and that was that.
Yeah, and if you're a Big Ten fan, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are, like, you could take a breath just in the sense of this strength of record thing that they've introduced that's going to be more prevalent in some of the playoff discussions. Like, Indiana was 8th, so, like, Indiana still probably would have been
right
in the playoff, even with this kind of strength of record thing added into it. The only thing that concerns me and why I'm very adamant that if Georgia goes 9-3 this year, they will make the playoff is because looking at ESPN's analytics and the FPI, the College Football Power Index, 9 of the top 13 preseason teams are from the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
And Florida is among them. So, and I'm not really sure how good Florida is going to be this year. But barring Florida losing to Long Island or South Florida or to Florida State at the end of the year, Florida's going to be high in that FPI because when 9 of the 13 teams are from the same conference, they're just going to be playing each other. So they're just going to be staying put. So we're going to get to the end of the season, and Georgia's loss against Florida, if that were to happen, is not going to look like a bad loss. So if they're 9-3, you can't point at the Florida game and say, oh, that's a bad loss. No, Florida's a top 25 FPI team. Like, that's not a bad loss. That's a good loss. Like, it was a close game. Georgia battled against the mighty Florida Gators, and Billy Napier got fired midway through the season. Well, that doesn't matter because FPI says they're still a pretty good team. Like, I'm ready to be irritated. I'm pre-mad, as I told you guys. Like, Georgia is the perfect team to go 9-3 this year and make the college football playoff. I think Georgia will be better than that, so I don't think we're going to get to that. But, like, when I was going through this and I was kind of predicting my teams, like, I had Ole Miss at 9-3. I had Tennessee at 9-3. And I was thinking to myself, like, man, it would not shock me. It would not shock me one bit if one of these teams got in this year.
You know what I really am not looking forward to? Because I thought about this as Stefan said it, and I was kind of like going through my schedule because I did it. Like, it was in my head. The phrase good loss, horrible. Oh my God. I hate hearing, oh, it's a good loss because that team is the 24th ranked team in the country. What? So what if they lost to the 20th ranked team in the country? It's a bad loss because they're not
just because they didn't have a number by their name on the lower third.
So because people 100 plus years ago decided, what if we just did 25 instead of 30? Oh, well, we did the AP top 30. All of a sudden 29 is now a good loss, not a bad loss.
I'm very happy it's not a top 30 as a person who's
you would.
I would love for it to be a top 15, but we're here. This is the life we live. Andrew, why is Miami in your bracket?
Because I think they're going to beat Notre Dame in week 1.
Okay.
And I think they're going to beat Notre Dame. I think they're going to run the table not run the table. They're going to have one loss the rest of the way, like through the regular season. And I think we're going to get to the end of the regular season. They're going to be 11-1 with a win over Notre Dame. And they're going to lose to Clemson in the ACC championship game. And we just saw it last year, to be fair, with SMU, that the committee has basically said, like, we're not really going to punish you a ton for losing a conference championship game. Like, we're not going to, like, maybe you'll fall, but you're not going to drop out of the college football playoff in general.
Sure.
I think an 11-1 Miami team with a dummy boy loss to someone in there, like, which is, I didn't predict which one, but I think that is probably the way that their season goes. And you lose to Clemson in the ACC championship game, I don't think that's going to hurt you.
Let the record show, I wasn't a Miami boy last year until like 5 or 6 games in. If they beat Notre Dame, I maybe will turn into a Miami boy again. We'll see.
Miami boy.
Look, they've got to, like, people might not like Carson Beck as like a quarterback, but I think he's fine enough. They've got a really good offensive line. They've got a lot on defense coming back. Like, that team is going to be good. And I think it's 11-1 good.
I'm laughing at you saying people might not like Carson Beck as if there's like reasons to.
Oh, is it like personal reasons? Yeah.
Yeah. Carson Beck's not a good quarterback. That's why people don't like Carson Beck.
He's fine.
Fine.
I find myself agreeing with Andrew more on things like when he goes, he's fun. We live in the Ohio State bubble, which means we sit at the King's table bubble. And so it drastically.
If you're not Jeremiah Smith, you stink.
Well, yeah, it's just that there's a standard of excellence we're going to watch which is why I think fans are so angry with Kyle McCord, because Kyle McCord he's a very good quarterback.
He was an above-average quarterback.
Right, but if the standard is you're a first-round draft pick, Heisman Trophy finalist, or you win a national championship, it drastically throws off how you should be viewing players. So I agree.
Yeah.
It came to head. We were in the Woody having a conversation about Minnesota, and you and Bill were making the point that it wouldn't get. And I was like, no, he's not good. It was like,
PJ Fleck's a good coach. Yeah.
He's a good coach. Is he Ohio State level good? No. Yeah. But that's not the only bar that exists out there.
Exactly. And like, again, I've said this before. It's like, if you win 9 games at the University of Virginia, you will have a parade in Charlottesville.
Yes.
Like people talk, I remember like the national championship game, people were like, Christian Gray's the worst corner in the world. He got toasted by Jeremiah Smith.
Right.
If that's the bar, then everybody sucks.
Right.
Then everybody's bad at the sport.
And it's not an edge, it's a me problem because of my background. I've covered 2 college football programs. I've covered Kent State and I've covered Ohio State. So I've literally covered both extremes ends of the spectrum. I've never had to cover the middle end of the spectrum. So I know you are either a very, very, very good football team or a championship or bust, or I'm covering, if we win a game, give that man an extension. Stefan's covered Mississippi State, which can be a roller coaster, right? They've had some good years, they've had some bad years. Andrew, this is your first, you went to OU, which is a quality, above average, very good, competitive MAC program that has won the MAC conference a couple recently. So it's a little, your guys' relationship with college football in terms of evaluating things, I think has allowed you guys to have some level of empathy for the people in the middle. Let's just say that.
Like I told, like Stephen once said before, like, I don't feel bad for the bad programs, just be better. Yes. And it's just like, I'm not gonna fault, like PJ Fleck's gonna win. Like PJ Fleck goes 8-4. That's a really good year for Minnesota. Ryan Day goes 8-4. Our subtext is going to be lighting up with people saying they need to fire Ryan Day out of a cannon.
PJ Fleck
goes 8-4. It's like, I'm not going to fault PJ Fleck for losing a race in a Honda Civic against a Mustang.
Fair.
What am I supposed to do? Like, come on, man.
And I think working with Andrew has allowed me to learn that over time here, and it's been helpful. With that being said, you said, remember last year they didn't leave SMU out. That's because the team who was ranked 11th in the college football playoff that year was 9-3. If Alabama hadn't lost to Oklahoma last year,
they would have been in,
and SMU would have been out. What Stefan and I are saying is, when we're talking about overcorrection, if there is an SEC team or a Big Ten team who was 9-3, and the option is them or the ACC or Big 12 team who got to the conference championship game and lost it, and that was their second loss, we think the SEC or Big Ten team is going to get in this year over the team who lost in the conference championship. That is what we are saying. That by overcorrect, because that's what the playoff came down to last year. We can talk about Indiana all that we want. This came down to the ACC got an extra team because the next highest ranked SEC team had an extra loss that they shouldn't have had. So those are the home games. I'll go first with who's going to be heading out on the road. I have Oregon at number 9. Oregon's schedule doesn't do it any favors if they lose to Penn State. It's just there's just not enough there for them. Ohio State, almost liken them to Ohio State. Ohio State lost the Oregon game, but they had quality wins at Penn State and against Indiana, other teams who were in the field. So like the rivalry aside, they had 2 other playoff wins on their schedule already that I think ended up being the deciding factor for why they got the home game as in the 8-9 game versus Tennessee. And I think the same thing might happen this time around, where the 8-9 game is going to be a Big Ten team against an SEC team, except this time around, Georgia might have more quality, even if it has some bad losses on its schedule. While if Oregon loses to Penn State, I'm not sure if Indiana's going to be a resume win this year the way it was last year. And then the rest of their schedule just doesn't, unless Washington turns into something this year as like a sleeper team, they just don't have a schedule that lets them show the committee that, hey, we deserve to be playing in Eugene that the Christmas weekend event, apparently. So that's why I have Oregon at number 9. I have Notre Dame at number 10. I don't think they're going to lose to Miami the opening week. I do think they might lose to Texas A&M the following week. Marcus Freeman has his team ready for those big time week 1 games. It's coming down off of that high after those week 1 opening games that can kind of shake some things. Now, they're going to have 2 weeks to come down from the high because they play week 1 and then they immediately have a bye week, which I'm sure nobody up there likes. I hate that. You're going to play a game after not playing for 9 months, and then you're immediately going to go into a bye week. I just think Texas A&M might come in and win this time around, and then maybe they just look shaky the rest of the year. And I am not a Miami boy, so I don't believe in the Miami win. So the Miami win stops being strong. So a one-loss Notre Dame team has to go on the road and play Kansas State as a number 10 seed. I have Michigan at number 11. I do have them sneaking into the playoff, and I think the win over Ohio State is going to be the reason they get in. That's the final punctuation for why they make the college football playoff. But they do have to go on the road. And what a story. What a storyline that will be. Bryce Underwood is supposed to be playing at LSU, learning behind Garrett Nussmeier this year. But then here comes the hometown school with the bag. And now he's a Wolverine, and now he's got to go to Baton Rouge. What a storyline that is. I told you, I'm all about the storyline. I'm all about the narratives. So Michigan's my number 11 seed, and I got Boise State as my G5 school. I just don't see how the G5 school doesn't end up being the 12 seed every single year. I just don't see how it happens. Now, I think Boise State, again, just like last year, if they beaten Oregon, then things can get a little interesting. I think that Notre Dame game is at Notre Dame. So if they get that win, now we're cooking with a little bit of grease here. But again, I have Notre Dame as my 10 seed. So it's not like I have Notre Dame at like 3 where that win's going to have that much of a weight. So first round games for me, Penn State hosting Boise State, LSU hosting Michigan, Kansas State hosting Notre Dame, and Georgia hosting Oregon. So last year, the Big Ten got a bunch of home games. This year, no home games other than Penn State for the Big Ten in the first round of the college football playoff. That's my bracket. Stefan, what's your first round matchups?
Yeah, I also have Michigan LSU. I have 9 seed LSU playing at Michigan. I have 10 seed Illinois playing at Notre Dame. I think Illinois is going to sneak in. Illinois at 11-1 is definitely getting in, and maybe they're even playing in Indianapolis at that point. Mm-hmm. The game at Indiana, I think that might be a season determiner for Illinois because if they lose at Indiana, which I do have them lose, I have them going 10-2. I have them losing against Indiana and Ohio State. I think at 10-2 they still get in, but it'll be dicey because we'll see how the committee treats a loss against Indiana, even if Indiana's like 8-4 this year. So my 10 seed is Illinois. My 11 seed is my Big 12 champ. I have Baylor winning the Big 12. When we did our Heisman pod last week, I was very high on Sawyer Robertson and what Baylor can do this year. So I have them coming out of the Big 12, maybe a bit of a sleeper, I guess, in the Big 12. And then my 12 seed is the G5 champ. I'm staying close to home. Give me Toledo making the playoff. I think their schedule. Baby. If they can beat Kentucky week 1 with like low key, maybe upset alert at Kentucky week 1, Toledo. Give me Toledo making the college football playoff.
I definitely thought about Toledo making the college football playoff. And by the way, Illinois was my team who got bumped out for the G5 school. So Illinois right there on the
I think I would have had Ole Miss right. I was between a 9-3 Ole Miss and a 10-2 Illinois, and genuinely in my head I was like, we might get an overcorrection here, and the 9-3 team might make it. So hopefully that doesn't happen.
Andrew, what are your first round matchups?
Yeah, I have Notre Dame at number 9. So that is number 8 Oregon versus number 9 Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is just one of those teams like early on where you're gonna go like I don't know, I'm not sure. They're starting a new quarterback. I think they're one of those teams that's going to get better over the course of the year, and they're going to be a pain in the butt for, in my scenario, it's Oregon, but whoever they play, I think if they get to the college football playoff, I think they're going to be a pain for whoever they have to deal with, because I think what you see in the first month of the season is not what you're going to see from Notre Dame in December. I feel the same way about the Big 12 champ, Utah. I think Utah is really interesting this year. We were talking about, playing your biggest games at home. They open at UCLA, but then they play Cal Poly and at Wyoming. And then they play Texas Tech at home. They get Arizona State at home. They get Kansas State at home. Utah has kind of long been talked about as this team that's like, man, when they get rolling, Whittingham might have them cooking down at the end of the season. They just got Devin Dampier as their quarterback, who's a great running threat. Their offensive line is going to be one of the best in college football, and I don't just mean for the Big 12s. Utah is the 10 seed. I think is going to be a really, 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 really tough matchup for Miami, the number 7 seed. So I have Miami versus Utah. My 6 versus 11, here's where it gets really interesting. I have Georgia versus number 11 Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M is going to make the college football playoff. I looked at their schedule. That Notre Dame game is winnable. They play at LSU. Brian Kelly in a big game. I mean, who do you trust there? They end the season against Texas. It's a rivalry game. I know it's on the road, but them going into that game at 9-2 or even maybe 10-1 is not crazy to me. So Texas as the number 11 seed, I have them getting in at 9-3. I think this is the year that when you map out the schedule, considering what A&M has to go through in the SEC, the committee is going to make the case that their SEC schedule, with 2 losses, should be in the playoff because their other loss was to a Notre Dame team that's also in the college football playoff. So I have A&M making it as the 11 seed. And then my 12 seed, this one's fun. I have the Navy Midshipmen making the college football playoff as the number 12 seed. They were 8-0 last year before they played Notre Dame, and they got trounced. I think they turned the ball over like 7 times or 6 times or whatever, which is a very uncharacteristic Navy thing to do. They have Notre Dame on the road this year, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They might be 8-0 going into that Notre Dame game. Like, Navy returns their backfield. Blake Horvath is returning at quarterback. He got Heisman consideration last year. Navy might have the schedule to do it. And I think even with like a close loss at Notre Dame, I think their schedule is easier than Boise's. And that might get them to the number 12 seed. And they would play Penn State on the road, which would set up for one of the funniest possible outcomes. Penn State hosting Navy in the college football playoff for the Fighting James Franklins. But that is my bracket. 5-12 Penn State Navy, Georgia A&M at 6-11, Miami, Utah 7-10, and Oregon Notre Dame 8-9.
I love these G5 picks.
You know how you said this is the most Andrew Gillis bracket ever, and I said just hang on?
Yeah.
Yep.
You picked a team who's only going to run the ball.
Yep.
I thought about it a bit last season, but the idea of Navy or Army being a playoff team and playing each other 6 days after the final college football playoff rankings.
Yeah,
like,
it's a fascinating.
What if Navy's the 12 seed and then they lose lose against Army?
It doesn't count. Like they came out and said, like, if this happens, so what?
Yeah.
If Navy's a playoff team, but then they lose to Army, then Air Force has to play in their place.
We just had all the yeah. That's a.
Do you know how funny the discourse would be that week about like how like there would be whoever's the 13 seed, whether it's like Illinois or another SEC team or whoever. Are you kidding me? You're going to put in Navy
and the troops like that. You can't disrespect.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say it's going to be. You're telling me LSU's not better than Navy? Oh my God, blah, 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 blah. Because I don't have LSU in my playoff. It's like, you're telling me LSU's not better than Navy, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, are you telling me this program's not better than Boise State?
No,
blah, blah, blah.
No, you can't.
Hate America.
You know what I would say to an SEC team complaining about that? Get your auto bids up.
Get your auto bids up. Man. Yeah.
Get your auto bids up.
Okay, very quickly here. Before we take our first break, I want to just get through the first round games and get to our quarterfinal, and then we can close out with that after the break. I have Oregon beating Georgia at Georgia. So it's Clemson versus Oregon. I have Penn State beating Boise State. So it's Alabama and Penn State. I have Michigan beating LSU. Because this is where I know everybody thinks Brian Kelly's going to fall apart at some point because he always does. I'm saying he's going to hold it together and then lose a home game to Michigan. So that's my only upset, though. I have Notre Dame losing in the first round to Kansas State, which, again, sets up another great narrative story. We stole your quarterback last year, Kansas State. Well, not really stole them. They moved on from him. But we took your quarterback and won a natty with him. And now we're going to beat you with the guy you used to replace him. So my quarterfinal, Clemson against Oregon, Alabama versus Penn State, Texas versus Michigan, and Ohio State versus Kansas State. Stefan, what's your quarterfinals?
Yeah, I have Penn State beating Toledo. So I have Penn State, Georgia.
Okay.
I have LSU beating Michigan. So I actually have. So you have the home team losing in LSU, and I have the home team losing in Michigan.
Yeah.
So that would set up LSU playing Clemson.
Part 2, baby.
I have Alabama beating Baylor, setting up Alabama, Texas. And then I have Notre Dame beating Illinois, setting up Notre Dame, Ohio State in the quarterfinals.
Okay. And Andrew, what are your quarterfinals?
Yeah, I have Penn State beating Navy. I have Georgia beating Texas A&M. I have Utah beating Miami. and I have Notre Dame beating Oregon. So I have 2 road teams winning. That would be Notre Dame and Utah. So that sets up for the quarterfinals of Clemson versus Notre Dame, Alabama versus Utah, Ohio State versus Georgia, and Texas versus Penn State.
Okay, let's take our final break here, and then we'll get down to the nitty-gritty of who we think is going to win a national championship here on Buckeye Talk.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Are your business expenses playing hide and seek? With Uber for Business, the small spends that slip through the cracks, like rides and meals, go right where you need them. Because it integrates with leading expense platforms, you can say goodbye to surprise costs, missing dollars, or chasing receipts. Everything's track downable. Uber for Business. Make small steps that make a big impact. Learn more at uber.com/small steps.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Stefan, Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis. This is the longest Market Down Monday we do. And it used to be shorter, but also the playoff used to be smaller. So blame college football for doing
that. This will actually, in 2 years, it'll be even longer.
In 2 years, we're just going to say who we think is going to make the Final Four. I'm not doing all that, man. This is too much. Okay, Andrew, you are up first. Your quarterfinals are number 1 Clemson versus number 9 Notre Dame, number 4 Texas versus number 5 Penn State, number 3 Ohio State versus number 6 Georgia. That might be a doozy, boy, oh boy. And number 2 Alabama versus number 10 Utah. Who is getting to the semifinal for you?
Yeah, this is kind of funny considering what happened last year and what happened in the college football playoff.
Mm-hmm.
I have the 1, 2, 3, 4 seeds advancing. I have Clemson beating Notre Dame. I have Bama beating Utah. I have Ohio State beating Georgia. And I have Texas beating Penn State. I think part of this played out as, LOL, like Penn State losing a big game against a top 5 team. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I know Penn State they played Navy the week before in my scenario, but yeah, I think that sets up for Clemson versus Texas and Alabama versus Ohio State in the Final Four, because the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Okay. For the record, our Texans, nobody said that they would lose a first round game. 1% said they would be playing in a non-CFP bowl game. And 9% said they would lose in the quarterfinal. And Andrew is not amongst that 9%. Stefan, what's your semifinal? What's your quarterfinal results?
Yeah, I have Penn State beating Georgia. I have Clemson beating LSU. I have Texas beating Alabama. And I have Ohio State for seemingly the 13th time in a row beating Notre Dame. So that sets up a semifinal of Clemson as the 1 seed versus the 5 seed Penn State. And Ohio State as the 2 seed playing 3 seed Texas. So another rematch. I've actually got a ton of rematches set up in mind because I have Clemson, LSU, I have Texas, Ohio State, and do Alabama and Texas play each other in regular season? Because I have them playing each other in the playoff. They don't.
They do not play each other.
Okay, well, never mind then. But yeah, so my semifinals: Penn State, Clemson, Texas, Ohio State.
This is why those week 1 matchups, they're fun, but in the grand scheme, their level of importance of how much they matter isn't necessarily the same. Because you're right. If you are correct in your prediction of this, and LSU and Clemson are playing each other again in a semifinal, they're going to look very different than the LSU and Clemson that play each other on August 30th. If Ohio State and Texas meet again in January, they're going to look very different than what they look like on August 30th. They're both going to be better, because they do have a lot of young guys who are developing. There are a lot of guys, I think, on both sides who probably aren't going to play much in this August 30th game because both teams just want to get through it, versus if you have 25 guys, well, let's say 28 guys play meaningful snaps for you on August 30th, maybe 35 play meaningful snaps for you in a semifinal or a quarterfinal because you've had a year of development, a year of guys gaining experience.
Yeah, I did consider, since I have Clemson beating them in week 1, I considered LSU winning the rematch. I do believe it's tough to beat a team twice, even though I feel like that's constantly proven wrong. But then I thought about Brian Kelly.
What if we just put Brian Kelly and James Franklin in a national championship game? And then it's a 60-minute game of, no, you take the win. No, you take the win. No, you take the win.
The world's first ever instance of a tie in a national championship game.
I too have Clemson and Penn State in one of my semifinals. And I think Clemson won 2 national titles while essentially getting the chance to kind of float through its regular season because it's in the ACC, and then people wondering, are they really that good or are they just in an easy conference? And then they would smack Alabama, and it's like, no, they're really good. They just don't have to turn it on for 4 months there. Though I do think that would be an interesting matchup with Oregon and Clemson. I have Penn State beating Alabama, and I think it might come down to Drew Aller taking that final step, and maybe he's just better than Ty Simpson that day. And that's all it takes. I have Texas beating Michigan, though I thought long and hard about Michigan gets it clicking and they beat Texas. But I'm just not ready for a playoff game between Ohio State and Michigan yet. I'm just not ready for that. That's just
a third meeting between Ohio State and Michigan this season.
I just don't want that. I don't want it. I do because it would be great it'd be great conversation, but I don't want it for the sake of my mental sanity and everybody else's mental sanity on both sides of things. And I have Ohio State beating Kansas State, setting up a rematch between Ohio State and Texas in a world where I thought about maybe making this the pseudo national championship game the way that I felt the Oregon Ohio State Rose Bowl was the pseudo national championship game, but I don't think that anymore. So those are our final fours. Andrew, what's your championship game? And by the way, before you give that though, our texters, 33% said Ohio State will lose in the final four. So that's not the highest percentage total either. So Andrew, what is your championship game?
Number 4, Texas versus number 2, Alabama. I have Texas beating Clemson, the number 1 seed, giving them their first loss of the season. And then I have Alabama beating Ohio State and making it to the national championship game. So that is number 2, Alabama versus number 4, Texas.
You got an SEC national championship game.
SEC national championship.
In the same bracket that has the Miami boys in it. Whew. Greg Sankey has a love-hate relationship with you.
I will say, I think we've done a good job of because we're smart, we're objective. The one thing I didn't like is when people do these like rage bait brackets and they're like the national championship game, Ohio State versus Michigan. Or, Notre Dame is going to host LSU in the playoff, the Brian Kelly Bowl. Or like,
you want to get page views or not?
What's that?
You want to get page views or not?
That's the thing. It's like, I'm glad we didn't do that. I feel like we've reached a point where I genuinely believe this. I'm not doing a bit. I'm glad we didn't make people upset. Or I hope we didn't.
I mean,
I want you to feel an emotion. I want you to be upset, or I want you love me or hate me. Don't be in the middle.
This is Buckeye Talk. The ultimate rage bait is 2 of us saying that Michigan's going to beat Ohio State this year. I think we've passed that point.
Yeah, man. I just said 45 minutes ago, Stefan and I said, we don't believe you. You need more people. So we're past all that. Stefan, what's your national championship game?
Yeah, I have Penn State beating Clemson and making it to the national championship game. And I have Texas winning the rematch with Ohio State. Setting up Penn State versus Texas. The Big Ten sending its most trusted soldier to go face the SEC.
The earth is off kilter. So it's Penn State versus Clemson? Is that what you said?
In the semifinals, and then the championship game is Penn State, Texas.
The problem is Penn State wasn't far off from getting to the national championship game last year, so you could... As much as we're like making fun of it, it's can you win one more game than you won last year, essentially.
What was your path, Stefan, for Penn State? Through because they have to win 3 games to get there. So what is that?
Pretty tough path. They'll beat Toledo, Georgia, and Clemson.
So it's last year's path.
Yeah, it's last year's path. Except Georgia's at.
They played SMU
at home.
They played SMU at home. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like this year's path is tougher because like they played Boise State in the quarters.
I think I'll say this: if you ranked this year's Georgia team, last year's SMU, if you work this year's Toledo and Georgia teams and you put them alongside last year's SMU teams and Boise State teams, Georgia's probably the most talented one. And then you put Boise State and SMU at 2 and 3, and then you put Toledo at number 4. So it equals out. It averages out to the same concept. And they played Gunnar Stockton, Georgia. We watched Gunnar Stockton last year. And I'm playing Carson Beck, Georgia, because he's a Miami boy now.
This proves the notion that the 5 seed is the best place to be.
It kind of is the best place to be. You get the worst of the seeds until the semifinal in each round. Okay, so both of you have Ohio State topping out in the Final Four, which is you're amongst the 33% of our voters and where they're at. I am where 17% of our voters are, and that's Ohio State gets to the national championship game. They beat Texas the second time around as well. And the reason why I have Ohio State beating Texas is because Sark's scripts are legendary, but I also think it's an inherent flaw to have that. I have long agreed with Kevin Wilson and Ryan Day and how they talk about scripts. Is the problem with scripts is all it takes is for one thing to happen and all of a sudden your script is over with and now you're freelancing because it's not going according to plan versus just going off of what I think there's pros and cons to both. To having a plan that's 15, 20 plays out like that versus allowing the game to dictate how you want to call it. I would rather my play caller do the latter. Because imagine spending 10 days planning for something. Okay, we're going to do this on first down, this on second down, this is it. And then you take a 7-yard sack as the first play of the game. Okay, no, you have to throw the script out of the window now. But also, once you get into the third quarter, once you get to the second quarter, your script is gone anywhere. You're just playing ball. And you're leaving yourself up to just anything happening versus allowing the game to dictate how you're going to call it and making the necessary adjustments. And I think that can be bad too, right? Jim Knowles would often allow that first drive to play out and then adjust off of that. That can be good or bad. 40% of our texters think Ohio State's going back-to-back. I have Ohio State playing Clemson in a national championship game. What fun that would be. Round 3 between Dabo and Ryan Day. I think Dabo wins this round again. I think Krajisnik is very, very good. I think that defensive line for Clemson is very, very good. I think Ohio State's offensive line is super talented. I think if I said last year Ohio State's offensive line could win the Joe Moore Award. Like I think I predicted it, and then it fell apart. So of course it didn't. If they're a finalist for the Joe Moore Award in 2025, I'm not going to be shocked. I'm not going to predict it, but I'm not going to be shocked. Especially since they'll have gone through Texas's defensive line. Penn State's got a quality defensive line. I have them playing some quality teams in the college football playoff. But that interior defensive line for Clemson is something else, man. And AJ Terrell's little brother, I think his name is Avion Terrell. He's playing there. He might be a first-round corner. I just think that might be the most like-for-like talent game of the season for them. And I think that might look similar to the 2019 Fiesta Bowl where it comes down to the last few plays of the game. And I think Clemson irks that one out. And now we have our first ever 16-0 college football playoff team. So I have Clemson winning the national championship amongst 17% of our voters who said they would lose. So overall, 40% think Ohio State's going back-to-back. 33% believe they're going to lose in the Final Four. 17% believe that they're going to lose in the national championship game, which I think is interesting that 57% of our voters think they're at least getting to the national championship game, but 40% of that group think if they get there, they're going to win it. While 9% say they lose in the quarterfinal, no one says they're losing in the first round, and 1% say they're losing in the college football playoff. Those are our brackets. I got Clemson winning.
Wait,
Who you got winning?
Yeah, I got Texas. I got Texas winning it against Penn State. One thing that's going to be interesting and where I think Ohio State and Texas actually maybe have somewhat of an advantage with the turnover on their roster. Like I have Penn State getting to the title game and losing to Texas. That's a lot of football for guys who came back in the span of 2 years. Like Dennis Sutton is going to be looking at 1,200, 1,300 snaps in the span of 2 seasons. Like that's a lot of football to ask these guys to play. So to me, like Penn State even getting to the title game is going to be a tough task. But I have Texas beating them there. So I have Ohio State losing to Texas week 1, and then the last 2 weeks I picked Arch to win the Heisman and Texas to win a national title.
So 2 orange teams. Andrew, you're going to make it 3 for 3 on the orange.
No. I think Alabama is going to win the national championship. I looked at the team talent composite from 2024. Alabama was number 1. They lost a lot from their 23 team, and they were still number 1. And they backed that up with a 3rd-ranked recruiting class. The talent is there. 247 Sports does like a pretty neat thing. They do like a team talent composite where it kind of lets you know 5 stars, 4 stars, stuff like that. That's not up for 25 yet, but I would venture to guess Alabama's going to be 1 or 2. I would be kind of surprised if they weren't. And I said earlier on the pod that typically when I come down to these games, I had to be careful. Typically when I come down to these games, it comes down to who has the better quarterback. I think Arch is probably the better quarterback in this game, but I think Alabama might have a quarterback that makes that quarterback gap not as significant. Like, again, it just kind of feels like, as crazy as it is, when you talk about the SEC this year, people are forgetting Alabama exists. Like, it's Texas. Oh, well, Georgia's going to come back. And, well, what if LSU makes that jump because they have Nussmeier? And then, but South Carolina has Lenora Sellers and blah, blah, blah. And it just... Alabama still might be one of the most top-to-bottom talented teams in college football, and they have a 5-star quarterback at the helm. It's a little similar to the way we've talked about Ohio State, like, frankly. Like, when we talk about Ohio State, we're like, man, Ohio State's still awesome. They've still got all this talent here, and here. And oh, by the way, a 5-star quarterback is taking over. Okay, literally the same thing is true at Alabama. I think that defense is going to be really good. I think it probably just took a year of kind of a step back for them to kind of weather the storm of Nick Saban leaving. I think Alabama's back. I think Alabama's going to win the national championship.
So we got Bama from Andrew, Texas from Stefan, and Clemson from myself. We all have Ohio State at least getting to the Final Four. But I'm the only one that has them getting to the national championship game, and none of us have them winning the national championship. Get the text 614-350-3315. That'll do it. We've marked down a lot of different stuff over the last month. We've marked down stats. We've driven our buses. We've marked down All-Americans. We've marked down Heisman Trophy finalists, and now we've marked down who we think is going to win the national championship and what Ohio State's record will be in the 2025 regular season. I think my record overall is 14-2. I think your guys' record is 13-2 overall for Ohio State, which would be on par, man. They've lost 2 games every year of Ryan Day's tenure ever since 2001. Every year since 2021, they've lost at least 2 games in this expanded playoff era. Get the text 614-350-3315. The season has officially arrived with this podcast. Tomorrow we talk to Ryan Day and the coordinators. I'm not sure yet if we're talking with Julian Sand as the norm. I would doubt we talked to Julian Sand before the Texas game, though I wonder if he'll be part of the normal schedule the way that Will Howard and Justin Fields and CJ Stroud have and Kyle McCord have been in the past of us talking to him midweek. We'll talk to coaches on Tuesday. We'll get a selection of players Wednesday evening. I would assume it's going to be the captains that we talk to, given who they're playing. Big pods, recruiting pods, game preview pods, post-game pods. Just as a heads up, we're going to go live after the game on Saturday for that post-game pod. We were going to go live before the game, but, you know, Fox is kind of what it is, right? It's kind of hard to go live at 8 o'clock in the morning when all the other stuff we're trying to do in the morning to get ready for that game. But season's here. No more predictions, no more hypotheticals, no more concepts of what the season might be. First game, Ohio State against Texas, number 1 versus number 3 on Saturday, August 30th, inside the shoe, 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. For Stefan, Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis, I am Stephen Means, and that was Buckeye Talk.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. Becoming the most valuable sports franchise in the world doesn't happen without risk. A man who's willing to bet it all, and the players ready to make their own luck. America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, is the story of the 1990s Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones's impact on NFL history. Featuring interviews with iconic 90s players and more. Watch America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, streaming now only on Netflix.